What's up, YouTube? This is the 82 and 0 podcast. Today we're going to talk about Bob Pettit. And this is someone who's been forgotten with time. And in my opinion, he's an all-time great. And it's sad his name has been forgotten in time. So, Robert Pettit was born December 12th, 1932. And he was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And his father was the sheriff. He played in church league basketball as a sophomore and grew 5 inches in less than a year. His father, like I said, was the sheriff, pushed him to practice in the backyard of their house until he improved his skills. And as a senior, he was 6'7", and he led Baton Rouge High to the first state championship in over 20 years. Pettit was selected to play in North-South All-Star Game in Murray, Kentucky. So he had a great high school career. And after high school, Pettit had a scholarship offers from 14 universities. And he accepted a scholarship to play at nearby Louisiana State University, LSU. He was a 3-time All-Southeastern Conference selection and a 2-time All-American as a member of the LSU men's basketball team. However, as most people know by now watching my videos, freshmen were not allowed to play varsity ball in those days. During those 3 years, Pettit averaged 27.8 points per game. He was the member of the Zeta Zeta chapter of the Delta, which is like his fraternity. Pettit made varsity debut at LSU in 1952. He led the SEC in scoring for the first 3 consecutive seasons, averaging 25.5 points per game. He ranked 3rd in the nation in scoring and also averaged 13.1 rebounds per game, helping the team to a 17-7 win-loss record for second place and finishing the league. Now, during his junior year, Pettit helped the Tigers sail through a 23-game regular season schedule with only 1 loss, so they would go 23-1. A clean sweep of the SEC conference opponents became LSU's second SEC title. Their first came in 1935, so about 20 years before this. And the school's first NCAA Final Four. He averaged 24.9 points per game, 13.9 rebounds per game for the 1953 season. He was honored with the selection and became all SEC All-American teams. Pettit averaged 31.4 points per game, 17.3 rebounds per game during the game his senior year, and once said he would lead his team to an SEC championship. And I've heard him talk about in interviews that his favorite moment of his career wasn't his championship in the NBA. It was when he scored 60 points against Louisiana College in the second game. And also, it was the SEC record for the scoring average. But it would get broken by Pete Maravich. In 1954, his number 50 was retired at LSU. He was the first Tiger athlete in any sport to receive the distinction. So, let's talk about his professional career. So, by the time he was finished with college, he was standing at 6'9". And he was one of the first players in NBA history to start lifting weights. So when you look at his listed weight of 200 pounds, I believe that's what his listed weight is for when he came into the league. But you look at when he started putting on all this muscle, he was at least 250, 270 towards the later end of his career. He got really big. He got the name the Bomber from Baton Rouge, Big Blue. So he was a bruiser. And so he was drafted in the 1954 NBA draft. He was the second pick overall. And he went to the Minneapolis Hawks. I know that sounds weird, but... So, the Atlanta Hawks, as we know them today, they originally started as the Tri-City Blackhawks, right? And that was back in the 49-50 season. And then going into the 51-52 season, they became the Milwaukee Hawks, up into the 54-55 season, which was his rookie season. before they would relocate to St. Louis, where they'd be the St. Louis Hawks up into the years 67 and 68, which is when they would relocate to Atlanta, which is where they're still at today. So he has a really good rookie campaign. Comes into the league at 22 years old. He puts up 20 points per game, 13.8 rebounds per game, 3.2 assists. And his team wasn't good enough yet to make the playoffs. They went 26 and 56. So around this time, the St. Louis Hawks would get better, and his scoring average would get better. So for his sophomore season, he got his first scoring title. He put up 25.7 points per game, 16.2 rebounds per game, on an efficient, for the time, 42% for the field. So that's the equivalent today of somebody scoring like 50%, 55%, I should say. And they go to the conference finals, where they lose to the Fort Wayne Pistons. Now, in 1957, despite the team going 34 and 48, don't be fooled by that record, okay? A lot of these guys on the team were injured throughout the season. So, by the time playoffs came around and they were healthy, they go to the finals, where they're matched up against the Boston Celtics. And this is Bill Russell's first year on the Celtics. And they go down to a Game 7. And Boston wins it 125-123. And the game goes into 2 overtimes. To give you an idea of how close it is, for the entire second overtime, every single basket went back to back. There was never like the Hawks score and then score again. It was Hawks, Celtics, Hawks, Celtics. And there was a very clutch moment at the end of the game where Russell has a chase down block. And they lost, despite Pettit having 39 and 19. And I wish there was more footage of this game. I haven't seen a lot. A few years ago, I don't know what happened to it. On YouTube, there used to be the full radio broadcast of the 1957 NBA Finals. And I wish whoever uploaded that would re-upload it. So, they lose. And going into the 57-58 season, Bob Pettit would be on a mission to get his revenge. And the team would go 41 and 31. They go back to the finals, although this time the playoff setup was only 2 rounds. I know, it's kind of ridiculous, but that's because there were only 8 teams back then, you know? So they go to the finals, and they're matched up with the Boston Celtics. And I know some people are going to try to put an asterisk on this because Bill Russell only played 4 games in that series. I get it. But still, you got to give the Hawks their praise, because in Game 6, they won it 110-109. Just by 1 point. Just by the hair of their teeth, they beat the Boston Celtics. And this is one of the greatest finals performances we've ever seen. Bob Pettit put up 50 points and 19 rebounds and 55% shooting. And this really reminds me of when Giannis won the championship last year on the Bucks. You know, he had like 51 points, I think. But this would be the only time the Celtics would lose in the finals during the 50s and 60s. So you got to give Bob Pettit his due, because he's the only one to ever defeat Boston in the finals. Yes, the Celtics did lose in 68, but that wasn't in the finals. This is their only finals loss. And during this time, the league started changing. So 58-59, he gets his second scoring title, right? He puts up 29.2 points per game, 16.4 rebounds on 43% shooting. And this is, like I said, when the league starts changing. Now, you got to understand that in 59, this would be his second MVP. He also won MVP in 1956. So at this point, he's a 2-time MVP. And he's the best scorer in league history at this point. And Wilt Chamberlain would come in the league the following season, and this would just shatter all of Bob Pettit's accolades that he had. Because before Wilt Chamberlain, kind of the consensus greatest scorer of NBA history was Bob Pettit. I mean, 29.2 points per game in the 58-59 season is pretty insane. I mean, but then Wilt would come in and average like 37. So, at this point, 58-59, they go 49-23. They lose to the Lakers. That Lakers team would go to the finals and lose to the Celtics. But then in 59-60 season, they'd be matched up again with the Boston Celtics in the finals, losing in a heartbreaking 7 games. And that 7th game wasn't as close. The Celtics won 122-103. But in 1961, this team goes 51-28. And in my opinion, this was the best Hawks team because it had Lenny Wilkens there now. And you still had a good group of guys. You had like Cy Green, Clyde Levalette, Cliff Hagan. So Clyde Levalette was putting up 22 points. Cliff Hagan, 22 points. And Bob Pettit was putting up 27. I consider this their best team. You know, I know they won in 58, but this was their best well-rounded roster, you know, when they got Lenny Wilkens. But they couldn't get it done. They lost in 5 games to Boston Celtics. And that would be their last finals appearance. And Bob Pettit, at this point, you could kind of see that, you know, Wilt was overtaking him. He would still have great years. I mean, for example, the 61-62 season, he put up 31 points per game and 18 rebounds. 62-63, he put up 28 points per game. 63-64, put up 27. So his career averages are 26.4 and 16.2 rebounds. And his final year would come in 64-65. He was only 32 years old when he called it quits. And he was dealing with injuries in his last year. He was fairly healthy throughout most of his career up until his last year. He started having some knee issues. And I think a lot of it too is this is just pure speculation. I haven't heard this from anywhere, so take this with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion. I think part of the reason why he retired was just starting to see other teams in the NBA starting to rise, get younger talent, and also he was just probably burnt out on losing to the Celtics or the Celtics winning every year. But that's just my opinion, you know. Maybe he just wanted to give it up because of injuries. So, in my opinion, he was the greatest power forward of all time at that point. He retires and he has 20,000 points, which at the time was the record, right? He had the scoring record at the time when he retired. I mean, obviously Wilt would pass him, but during this time, he's considered the greatest power forward of all time. Now, I'll let you guys form your own opinion on who the greatest power forward is today. Some people will say Tim Duncan. Some people will say Kevin Garnett. Some will say Barkley, Malone, whatever. So, he retires after that year, and after that, he would go into banking. So he worked in the banking industry in Baton Rouge. You know, he went back to his hometown for 23 years. And he would enter financial consulting in 1988. In 2006, he retired from Equitas Capital Investors, a financial consulting company that he co-founded. He married his wife, Carol, who died in 2010, and they have 3 children and 10 grandchildren. So he would have a very successful career off of the court, too. So that's Bob Pettit's story. He's still alive today. He was born, like I said, December 12th, 1932. He's 89 years old today. And from what I've seen of him, I've seen some recent appearances of him, and he seems sharp as a tack. He doesn't seem to have slipped much. And I would love to do an interview with him if that's possible someday. Eventually I want to turn this channel into where I can interview players from the past, and I can ask them, good questions, but also fan-submitted questions. So if anyone knows how I can get a hold of Bob Pettit for an interview, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to do that. Or just any player you want to see from the past. If there's a way to get it done, I want to do it. So that's Bob Pettit's story. I'd say top 5 power forward of all time. He's got a championship, 2-time MVP, 11-time All-Star, 4-time All-Star Game MVP, 10-time All-NBA First Team. He was the Rookie of the Year, 2-time scoring champion. He was a rebound leader in 1956. He's a member of the 25th anniversary team, the 50th anniversary team, and the 75th anniversary team. And he's got his jersey retired by the Atlanta Hawks and the LSU Tigers. And I also want to mention he had a great outside game. I just want to point that out, because a lot of times people today focus on how players can shoot from anywhere. This guy could shoot from anywhere on the court. A great mid-range, great outside game, very strong, could take it to the post. He's one of the players that I think if you teleported from, 58, 59, and put him to today, and he adjusts today, he'd be great. And he had a killer work ethic, a killer mentality. So, Bob Pettit, thanks for watching.